We have a very, very interesting new anti-Donald Trump ad coming out from Our Principles PAC. I will play it for you, and then we'll talk about what Our Principles PAC is. And the whole point of this ad, this is a right-wing ad, mind you, is to show that Donald Trump is basically a lifelong Democrat supporting typical Democratic positions. Let's take a look at the video. Let's listen. It is fascinating.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say.
Universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
Well, who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it. The government's going to pay for it.
This tax would raise approximately $5.7 trillion.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Right.
I hate the concept of guns. I'm not in favor of it.
Why are you joining the Reform Party?
I really believe the Republicans are just too crazy right. I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, you know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa, perhaps.
Right.
Partial birth abortion. Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I'm very pro-choice.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I am pro-choice in every respect. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say.
Who do you think would be the best qualified to make a deal with Iran?
Hillary's always surrounded herself with very good people. I think Hillary would do a good job.
Make a deal with Iran.
Well, I think Hillary would do a good job.
Nancy Pelosi, the speaker?
And I'm very impressed by her. I think she's a very impressive person. I like her a lot. She was going to really look to impeach Bush and get him out of office,
right,
which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing.
Right.
So I thought he did a great job tonight. I thought he was strong and smart, and it looks like we have somebody that knows what he's doing. And it's a strong guy who really knows what he wants, and this is what we need.
Hillary's a great friend of mine. Her husband is a great friend of mine. I think Hillary is going to take it, and I think Hillary is very, very capable. I'm very pro-choice, a liberal in health care.
Universal health coverage.
I
for the
like
nation.
universal.
As far as single payer, it works in Canada. It works incredibly well in Scotland.
It just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans.
Donald Trump and I both agree that there ought to be more taxation.
What do you think of eminent domain?
I think it's a wonderful thing. I'll be honest with you.
For people that have been here for years, that have, been hard workers, have good jobs, are supporting a family, it's very, very tough to just say, you have to leave, get out. How do you throw somebody out that's lived in this country for 20 years? We just can't throw everybody out.
He was basically
absolutely
a Democrat.
fantastic. All right. Government health care that the government will pay for. Tax increase to raise almost $6 trillion. I'm more of a Democrat. I hate the concept of guns. Republicans are too crazy. I would not ban partial birth abortion. I'm very pro-choice. Hillary is the best qualified to make a deal with Iran. I'm very impressed with Nancy Pelosi. It would have been wonderful to impeach George Bush. Obama did great with the stimulus. Hillary and Bill are friends of mine. She's very, very capable. I am more than pro-choice. Single payer works in Canada, and the economy does better under Democrats. This is the Republican leader, Lewis, the leading Republican candidate.
And some of these things he has said very recently. Yes, some of the things in this I wouldn't call a flip-flop because, he admits that he likes, even on the Republican stage recently, he admitted that he liked universal health care.
Right.
But yes, this, it seems like it could be pretty brutal for his, campaign.
And there's no doubt. I mean, Trump's positions are either concocted to appeal to extremist Republicans, ban Muslims, deport everybody, build a wall and force Mexico to pay for it, all this stuff. Or it's just really a show, right? I mean, and I'm increasingly thinking that this is just a show. There's no way that Donald Trump believes the stuff that he's saying. That doesn't mean he's any less dangerous than what he would be by coalescing these extremist xenophobes and nativists. There's no doubt about that. This was put out by a super PAC formed by Katie Packer, who is Mitt Romney's former deputy campaign manager. And of course, this is all about concern from within the Republican Party about Donald Trump. This is a very, I like a lot of the positions that Trump espouses in this video, but from a political point of view, this could be pretty damaging to Trump.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've kind of both been saying for a while that we don't really believe that he believes all the things he's saying.
Right.
And on many issues, as you just saw from this attack ad, he's actually kind of level-headed.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And the more money that Republicans spent against each other, the better it's going to be for the eventual Democratic nominee. If I'm wrong, tell me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at DPACman. Lewis is on Twitter at Lewis Motamedi. Let's talk about two new polls from the state of Iowa. The big story in the first two primary states on the Democratic side, of course, have circled around Iowa and New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders appears to be pretty well ahead in New Hampshire and sort of tied in Iowa. And we have an interesting new poll by CNN ORC, which puts Bernie Sanders very far ahead of Hillary Clinton in Iowa, 51-43, with Martin O'Malley at 4%. The big question, Lewis, is the poll accurate? Can we trust the methodology? The good news is that this poll does include cell phones in addition to landlines. Oftentimes, when we see Bernie not do well in polls, cell phones are very much underrepresented, which underrepresents certain age brackets which are favorable to Bernie Sanders. The bad news in terms of accuracy is that the sample size is only 280 voters, which is a smaller sample size than we like to see. But because of the likely voter algorithm that this poll uses, they tout a 2% margin of error, which is pretty good. Now, we have another new poll in Iowa from CBS. In that one, Bernie Sanders is ahead, but only by 1 within the margin of error, 47-46%. And then, of course, when we look at the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls in Iowa, Hillary Clinton is still ahead, but not by that much, only by about 5 points now, just slightly outside of the margin of error for some of the polls included in that. She is 9 points ahead in a recent KBUR poll, but that poll's margin of error is twice that of the CNN ORC poll. We're a week away, Lewis. I mean, in a week plus 10 hours, we are going to know what the results are in Iowa. And at this point, it seems as though Iowa could be huge in terms of, number one, the impact on momentum that it could have, and number two, the impact that many people will have on the perception of this race. The reality is, with proportional delegate allocation, a 52-48 win for Hillary Clinton in Iowa is not very different than a 52-48 win for Bernie Sanders in Iowa, right? Statistically speaking, it's not going to be a game changer, more than likely, in this race. In terms of the optics, though, it could be a huge game changer.
Yeah, Bernie needs to win. It could be a game changer. I think Bernie will win both.
Really?
But, one of the little side bonuses to, after the primary is not necessarily seeing who wins so much as finding out which of the pollsters are full of you-know-what.
Oh, we always love to see that. No question about it. And in Iowa, some of the political experts I've been talking to say that the ground game is super important in Iowa because you have a caucus situation. You don't just show up and cast a ballot, right? You show up, you sit at tables, you hang out. The weather can be bad in Iowa on February 1st. It could be tough to say, it could be easy rather to say, I think I'm just going to stay home. I'll vote in the eventual election that we have here. So the ground game is huge in getting people that support your candidate to the caucuses. And every report that I've read and everybody I've spoken to, Lewis, says Bernie Sanders has a really good ground game in Iowa. We will see if it pays off in just a week.
Yes, I'm rooting for Bernie, Dave, all the way. You got to be confident.
Talk to us about this on Reddit. We have a Reddit discussion forum. Go to davidpakman.com/Reddit. That's REDDIT. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll talk to somebody who sounds really convinced that Bernie Sanders will be our next president. Okay, we have some interesting video that Dan Merica from CNN recorded. This is just 11 seconds of Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton speaking to just some kid at an event about college affordability. So let's set it up, okay? Hillary Clinton has done a really good job of sort of sounding like she has basically the same positions as Bernie Sanders on a lot of issues, including college tuition, when she really doesn't. So Bernie Sanders was very clear in recent debates and in other statements. He wants free college tuition for everybody, period, right? It's a very clear position. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, said, well, she wants everyone to be able to afford going to college, but she only wants to give the free college to people who really need it, because otherwise rich people like Donald Trump's kids might end up going to college for free when they don't need to go for free. And maybe it would be like free college in exchange for work on campus or something like that. Okay, so clearly she wants to sound just as progressive as Bernie, but her position is actually different. So Dan Merica shows up and films her saying to, just like I said, a little kid, that her opponent Bernie Sanders just wants to give away free education to everybody as if that's a really bad thing. Let's take a look at the video here.
Yeah, so, but that's my opponent's plan, is to give free education to everybody. I think we should take our money and focus it on families that really need the help.
Right. She's such a politician, and I actually admire like her political skills. I mean, she's able to just immediately look someone right in the face and create a distinction where she makes the other guy seem crazy. He just wants to throw around free education for everybody. No. We should take our money and really focus in on everybody who really needs help. Now, the thing is, almost everybody needs help to afford college at this point. College is insanely expensive. Books are insanely expensive. Most people don't have the net worth to afford college for their kids. That's just plain and simple what the math of it is, Lewis. Almost everybody needs help to afford college.
We have a student debt crisis, and I don't use the term crisis lightly. It's a huge problem right now.
And I was curious to see, well, what is Hillary Clinton's definition of what it means to need help paying for college? So I went to her website to see what she actually says about it, and she has a section called the New College Compact, and it says, we will provide grants to states that commit to ensuring that no student should borrow for tuition and improved affordability for other costs at four-year public colleges and universities. I have to admit, the way it's written on her website sounds like everybody is going to come out of college with absolutely no debt. And I guess maybe part of it is by working, Lewis, or I don't know. I mean, there's no definition on Hillary's campaign website as to who qualifies for help and who doesn't. She just says nobody will come out of college with debt.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Her arguments against Bernie's plan are just invalid. They're borderline stupid. And her plan is intentionally ambiguous. So I really hate everything Hillary does.
There's two, Lewis having a lot of animosity towards Hillary Clinton. There's sort of two, but you'd still vote for her over any Republican.
Yeah, I would.
There's sort of two possibilities in my reading of it, of what Hillary has said and what is written on Hillary's website. Either A, she doesn't really want free college for everybody, and people are going to come out of college with debt, right? Or option B, she basically has the same position as Bernie Sanders, but for some reason is saying that it's slightly different. I don't really know what the truth is, but if you can go on and look at this new college compact, new college affordability compact that Hillary Clinton has, I don't see specifics about who it is that would have to pay. If there's a guarantee no one incurs debt in college, explain the mechanism through which people might. Could it be that it's based on what Hillary's math determines people should be able to afford? So they say, okay, based on what you make, you should be able to come out of college without debt, but maybe the financial situation doesn't really permit that. I don't really know what the answer is. I mean, I'm honestly asking. I want to know.
Ask away. Don't hold your breath on getting the specifics of that from the Hillary campaign, Dave. I don't think it's going to happen.
Speaking of laughing, CBS host Bob Schieffer, he was unable to contain a giggle fit during his interview with Republican Senator and presidential candidate Ted Cruz. Remember when Republicans shut down the government and Ted Cruz absolutely loved it? Ted Cruz went on CBS with Bob Schieffer and said it was Obama who shut down the government, acting like he had nothing to do with it. And Bob Schieffer, understandably, could not contain a giggle fit. Take a look at this. Not this one, though. Not this one. This is from the Democratic debate last night. We have the Ted Cruz clip on with Bob Schieffer. Let's review. Nope, that's not it either. I know you've got it in there somewhere, Lewis. We'll pick it up with Bob Schieffer.
I do have
asking
it in there.
for a second time.
Here we go.
You're not taking responsibility for this? Nope, now we have just audio of the debate.
Okay, well, something is going on with this computer, Dave.
I know we have it, Lewis.
You're just going to have to talk while I try and get this figured out.
All right, so to set it up more extensively, Bob Schieffer asked Ted Cruz once, what about your responsibility in shutting down the government? And Ted Cruz said, oh, no, you don't remember right. I mean, Democrats said we shut down the government, but it was really Democrats and Obama that actually shut down the government. So then Bob Schieffer asks again, wait a second, you're still denying responsibility. And Lewis, Ted Cruz said,
all right, let me go back to one thing. And the question I asked you was, would you ever conceive of threatening to shut down the government again?
Well, as I said, I didn't threaten to shut down the government the last time. I don't think we should ever shut down the government. I repeatedly voted to fund the federal government.
Senator, if you didn't threaten to shut down the government, who was it that did? I mean, but we'll go on
it
to
was
something
Harry Reid and President Obama. But Bob, look, I understand that the White House said over and over again the shutdown is the Republicans' fault, and I understand that's what you're repeating. But the reality is, I voted over and over again to fund the federal government.
All right,
and
let's stop it
reason
there.
we had a
Bob
shutdown,
Schieffer is right to laugh. I mean, this is just
I know
absolute.
they told you. They said we.
Do we have? Yeah. This is crazy, right? I mean, fortunately, Republicans like Ted Cruz have not been able, Lewis, to confuse or trick Americans. Most Americans understand the shutdown was the fault of Republicans. And Ted Cruz trying to do the slime the media thing, saying, hey, Democrats have been saying we shut down the government, so I understand you're repeating that, right? Trying to attack Bob Schieffer. This is not even controversial. There's tons of controversies in this country that shouldn't be. Planned Parenthood, Benghazi, etc. This is fortunately not a controversy because Americans know that Republicans shut down the government, and this is laughable.
Well, don't be so sure. We tend to have short memories.
You think?
And I think we know it was a disaster. We know that Boehner said it was a disaster. We know that Obama had absolutely nothing to do with the shutdown.
Right.
But, you know, if you go back and you start saying it was the Democrats' fault, it was Obama's fault, Obama wouldn't compromise. Obama,
say it enough.
If you say it enough, it kind of becomes true. We don't hear much of this, but...
No, we don't hear much of it because the Republicans didn't do it again because it backfired so drastically. Send me your thoughts on this. Am I missing something in Ted Cruz's explanation? We're on Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. We've been talking about it. You've probably heard about it. Ammon Bundy and his so-called militia have been occupying federal property since the beginning of January, and law enforcement didn't really do much to remove them for weeks. The locals have been increasingly angry, and it all exploded in everybody's faces last night at about 7:30 p.m. Eastern last night, or 4:30 p.m. local time in Oregon. Oregon militant and Arizona rancher with 11 foster children, Lavoy Finicum, was shot dead by law enforcement. This is the guy who, as I mentioned, was caring for something like 11 foster children with his wife. He was reportedly shot last night when law enforcement stopped a group of militants on their way to establish a shadow government in nearby Grant County. This is like the government is tyrannical bingo, right? Establish a shadow government, tyranny, our right to the land. They're hitting all the talking points, Lewis, that are typical of these types of anti-government tyranny types. The whole point of this shadow government that they wanted to create, this is just amazing. They wanted to create their own justice system to attempt to arrest local officials. This is deep mental illness. I mean, think about the double standard in everything they're doing. They don't think that the government has rights to the land that they want, so they want to forcibly take rights to that land. Well, hold on a second. Doesn't the land really belong to the Native Americans that it was originally taken from? They don't represent what they don't respect what they consider to be the arbitrary imposition of power by the government to arrest people. So they want to arbitrarily impose their power to arrest people on others. Will they ever realize the absurdity of this?
I don't think so. They think they're dealing with this Orwellian government, right, that we have.
Yeah.
And they probably think that they are heroes. Right. They probably view themselves as some type of hero.
Much like the ISIS militant, they also view themselves as some kind of heroes risking death for the principles they believe in. And Lavoy Finicum actually said at the beginning of this thing, Lewis, he was willing to die for his interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. Is there something admirable there about being so committed to this document? I mean, what if he was willing to die for his interpretation of a Franz Kafka novel? Would we see the same reaction from these right-wingers? I don't really know. No, but it strikes me as very similar to the ideology of some of these ISIS militants. They are willing to die for what they consider to be their interpretation of whatever, insert here.
Yeah, it just seems like a version of extremism. Now, luckily, they are beheading people. Who knows what they would do if they actually got their hands on an official.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all came to a head last night. And how many arrests were there?
Well, there were a number of others, six to eight others. I'm getting different numbers from different news sources, including Ammon and Ryan Bundy, two of the sons of Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy, were arrested after this shootout that took place. One other person was wounded. Authorities say it wasn't a life-threatening injury. This is some of the worst in our country. This is what makes the U.S. look really insane to most of the developed world. And we talk about we have multiple countries in this country. We have the Northeast and the West Coast, and then we have a lot of other stuff going on in between that is really not representative of American values or how we really want to be perceived abroad. This is the bottom of the
your
barrel.
interpretation of American values and how
Yes.
You wish to be perceived abroad.
Correct.
So, yes, in that way, Dave, I think it's maybe a bit subjective, but I think we can objectively say that what these guys are doing is just
Arbitrary law breaking.
Way too far.
By the way, why did the government even allow someone to have 11 foster children? That's a real question about Lavoy Finicum, the late Lavoy Finicum. Under what pretense does it make sense to have 11 foster children? I'd be curious what his household income is to question whether that income even justifies the foster children. Of course, you get some stipend towards a foster child, but most foster parents will tell you it is not nearly enough to actually cover the cost of that child. Who in their right minds gave this family 11 foster children?
Well, I'm thinking that this is probably one of those super Jesus-y families who thinks that they need to save children. And if their intentions are good and they gave these children a good home, that's wonderful.
Can you really give 11 children a good home? I mean, it seems like a very difficult thing to do.
It does seem very difficult. So it's strange. It's very strange. It's just not normal. I guess I'd have to see the home.
The last Republican primary debate before the Iowa caucuses is tomorrow, Thursday night. And yesterday, Donald Trump has abruptly announced he is not going to be participating in the debate on Fox News tomorrow night. And the reason why is his ongoing feud, not only with Fox News sort of generally, but specifically with Megyn Kelly. You'll remember she was a moderator in the last Fox News debate a couple months ago. And after that debate, Donald Trump suggested that maybe she was bleeding from her vagina, and he's objected to participating in tomorrow night's debate, saying, why should the networks continue to get rich on the debates? Why do I have to make Fox rich? And he's also upset, apparently, about a press release that Fox News put out. Trump called it a wise guy press release. Now, I'm getting emails from our viewers, Lewis, and some people in our audience, they don't believe it. They say, last minute, Trump will come to some kind of an agreement with Fox News for him to be there. Trump said he was instead going to host a competing event in Iowa designed to raise money for wounded veterans, going on to say Fox is playing games. They can't toy with me like they toy with everybody else. Let them have the debate. Let's see how they do with the ratings. This is pretty compelling to me, Lewis, because Fox News and Roger Ailes, the chief executive of Fox News, have sort of drawn a line in the sand saying, hey, we defend Megyn Kelly here. It's not about what we think about Donald Trump. Megyn Kelly works for us. We like her and we defend her. This is somewhat smart because Trump may get more news coverage by refusing to participate than the benefit he would get as one of many candidates on stage for 2 hours.
Agreed. I don't think it would really help him being on that stage. That being said, I don't think it's really going to hurt Fox News either. But what does he really have to gain? I'm not seeing it.
I think it will hurt Fox News in the sense that for some people, they're just tuning in to see what Trump will say. I mean, whether or not they consider him a serious candidate is almost secondary. They just say, how will Trump participate? How will he affect the dynamic here? And there is understandable shock about the joke that this election has become on the Republican side. But in a way, it's logical, right? I mean, we've had 15 years in this country of reality show culture, and the Republican primary is now a reality show. And maybe everything about what's going on is logical here.
Yeah, maybe. The debates certainly have really not been that substantive anyway.
Obviously.
Yeah, and so
understatement of the year.
Yeah, I mean, with or without Trump, it's still a joke.
Although it would be interesting if, in spite of getting lower ratings without Trump, the debate is more substantive without Trump because there's less of a focus on the reality show attacks. I don't know. I'm curious to see. Donald Trump should announce an exclusive interview like on CNN at the same time, during which he will, I don't know, announce who his top VP choice is or something. That would be a risky move for Trump. And it would also be a risky move for CNN, right? Because generally these big networks sort of agree, we all will share in the debates. And if CNN agreed to do something like that, or MSNBC, I think it would be absolutely compelling. I doubt that it will happen.
I think it would be a wise decision for whoever decides to do that. Not that it's going to happen. But if Trump decides not to do the debate, he's fair game. Who cares what network he decides to go on during that time?
So it may be winding down in Oregon with the armed occupying militia after the death of Lavoy Finicum and the arrest of 6 to 8 people. It may not be winding down, but we now have video, and this is just completely unhinged lunatic video. Strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen, because it's about to get a little bit nuts. A broadcast from inside the refuge where this federal building is being occupied showed a totally unhinged, mind-blowing lunatic militiaman promising a bloodbath. This is a live video feed from the Defend Your Base YouTube channel. It shows a bunch of different militants operating a large excavator. That's one of these big construction machines. At least one of the militants was dressed in military-style gear and carrying a rifle. Seems like almost a rite of passage, Lewis, to participate in such an occupation. Let's take a look at the absurdity together. Here's clip number 1 of this, I don't know, dispatch from the lunatic fringe, to quote Patriot Mail. Let's take a listen.
Media's been ordered to leave. That means they're coming to kill us, and they don't want them to see that. They're going to murder all of us.
Yeah.
And the medias are cowards.
So that was a calm militiaman. That's the calm portion of this video, Lewis. Now I want to play for you when things started to escalate.
Media's been waiting for a bloodbath this whole time we've been here. Now there's going to be one, and they're running. They're told to run because the feds don't want to know who's murdering us.
Yeah. Nice environment
American people
there.
better wake up, get here, and fight for your country. Right now, it is on.
Reasonable people. I mean, these are the types of people you could just talk calmly about how we have a system of laws in this country and what the Constitution really is about. I would see no problem at all speaking very rationally with these individuals. I'm sure they'd be glad to come to the table and have a calm discussion.
Well, if he thinks that he is about to be gunned down, I could see how he'd be a little fired up. But there does seem to be a huge difference between when you hear this guy talk and when you'd hear Ammon Bundy speak.
Right.
Ammon Bundy did seem very calm pretty much all the time. He had a very calming aura about him.
Almost bizarrely so.
Yeah, considering he was part of the hostile, weaponized takeover of a government building.
Yes. And these gunmen are clearly suffering from delusions of grandeur. I mean, this is clearly the first time that they've gotten a taste of this level of attention. They seem desperate to keep it. And I said it earlier in the show, and I'll say it again. I would be very worried that if and when authorities close in on them, if this thing doesn't start winding down as it appears it may be starting to do, I would expect or anticipate or be prepared for them to be increasingly erratic in their actions because they do not want their 15 minutes of fame or their 26 days of fame to end. If I were federal or state agencies, I would be very careful around these guys, but I would not have let it continue for 26 days. That is completely inexcusable.
Well, I disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I think I'd just let it keep happening. If I were the authorities, I would say, let them stay there. Let them stay there as long as they want. Disrupt their lives. They're making no money. Who knows what's happening in their personal life as a result of this?
Well, some of them are losing custody of foster kids, but that guy's dead now, so I guess that's not his primary concern anymore.
Yeah. Well, so I say, let it just fizzle out.
But would you at least cut any food and supplies from coming in? I mean, or would you just allow them to get whatever they want, the mayonnaise and the tampons and everything on that list?
I think I'm neutral on the supplies coming in. I
Really?
think it's not a bad idea to cut off their supplies if you want to end it a bit quicker.
But how do you justify allowing this deliberate law breaking? I mean, in what other
well, here's the
circumstances?
thing. It's not that you're really allowing it. It's that you know that they're willing to start shooting. And if you want to avoid deaths on both sides,
right,
you can just let this run its course.
Would that not set an absolutely ridiculous precedent, though, for others who say, hey, if I can just break whatever law I want and sort of be allowed to do it until I decide to end it, and yes, then I may be arrested.
Well,
but if I'm going to be allowed to just do it for as long as I want.
They're going to be arrested no matter what happens. I mean,
some were already let go. Some were let go.
Okay, well, I would arrest everyone no matter what happens. No matter how long this takes, you'll find them at some point when they go back to their lives without their rifle, and you'll be able to arrest them. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't arrest them or charge them with anything. I'm saying that if you want to avoid a violent standoff,
let it peter
no
out.
one's really being affected by this takeover. I mean, this is not adversely affecting the lives of citizens or government employees or really anyone at this point.
The people in that town would disagree. They are furious about how this is just an insane hubbub, roads blocked,
They don't
chaos.
like it. It's not making life easier, but
no, it's certainly not.
But I wouldn't call it chaos or a war zone or anything like that.
No, fortunately, it is not. Who do you agree with on this? Would you just let it sort of fizzle out on its own, or would you take more proactive action to prevent this from going 26 or 27 days? I'm on Twitter at dpacman. Lewis is on Twitter at Lewis Motamedi. Okay, let's get to some news on the Democratic side, and then after today's interview, we will get into some news from the Republican side. We've been talking on the Democratic side about what is happening in South Carolina and Nevada. We have tons of polling data from New Hampshire and Iowa, which are the first two primary states. We have basically been at a standstill with Nevada and South Carolina data with no recent 2016 polls. Now, South Carolina is key because it is the first primary state with a heavy non-white electorate, and this is something that has been considered a pretty difficult area for Bernie Sanders. Now, in South Carolina, the most recent poll from December was by Fox News, and it had Hillary Clinton ahead by 44 points. We finally, Lewis, have a new poll from South Carolina, from CBS News and YouTube, and it shows that Bernie Sanders has cut CBS News YouGov. The lead for Hillary Clinton has been cut in half from 44 to 22 by Bernie Sanders. Let's take a look at this poll, Lewis, if we may. You will notice the CBS YouTube. Is it YouTube or YouGov? Now I don't remember, Lewis.
Probably YouGov.
I thought it was YouGov. Maybe that's a typo. Okay. If you look at the prior poll, Fox News had Hillary Clinton at 65, Bernie Sanders at 21. That was plus 44 for Hillary Clinton. The latest poll with data from this month has Hillary Clinton 60, Bernie 38. This has cut the spread in half to only 22. Now, with almost 2 months between the polls, we have to assume to some extent, Lewis, that this newer poll is more reflective of the situation today and thus should be weighted more heavily in thinking about what the situation is as we speak today in late January in South Carolina. So what I decided to do was let's put together a possible delegate scenario based on the first 4 states, based just on current polling averages. So it will take a look here. The first state is Iowa, okay? Iowa has 44 delegates up for grabs. Based on current polling, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders would each come out of Iowa with 20 delegates. Okay, we go on to New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, there are 24 delegates up for grabs. Based on a current average of recent polling, Bernie Sanders would come away with 13 and Hillary Clinton with 9. Then this is where it gets a little trickier. We have no recent data from Nevada. Let's assume Hillary Clinton still has a 50-30 lead in Nevada. Based on the 35 delegates up for grabs in Nevada, that would see Hillary Clinton come away with 17 and Bernie Sanders come away with 11. And now, based on this most recent poll from South Carolina, where 53 delegates are up for grabs, we would see Hillary Clinton come away with 32 and Bernie Sanders with 20. This means of the 156 delegates available in the first 4 primary states, Hillary Clinton, based on current polling, would come away with 78, 50% of the delegates, and Bernie Sanders with 64. This is not speculation. This is not pie in the sky. This is the race we have right now. This is based on recent polls, Lewis. We would see Bernie 41%, Hillary 50% after the first 4 states. Now, what we have to remember is 156 delegates in those first 4 states. Those states have much more symbolic value than they do delegate value because it is not that many delegates when you consider the big primary days of multiple primaries in one day coming later in March.
Yes. It seems, though, that every day nationally, it seems that Bernie Sanders is doing better.
No, there are more and more polls that have Bernie in contention, but on average, Hillary Clinton is still doing quite well nationally, although you're absolutely right that compared to 6 months ago, no comparison whatsoever.
Yes. Nationally, I understand who is in the lead, but every day there are more polls. I'm not sure why, but I think if he were to win those first few primaries, maybe things would change drastically after that.
I think that the symbolic value of having 4 primaries and Bernie Sanders having only a 9 percentage point deficit, right? Having 41% of the delegates to Hillary Clinton's 50%, if indeed it ends up that way, would be absolutely huge in terms of the PR value.